Tonight on the Night Files, we take you back to the winter of 1978, to the icy slopes of Northern California, where five men vanished into the Sierra Nevada mountains. Their car abandoned, their bodies found scattered, one of them never found at all. This is not a story of survival. This is a story of fear, of confusion, of something that waits in the snow. This is the real case of the Yuba County Five, still unsolved, still terrifying, and still echoing through the forest. Stay close. Don't lose the trail, because what you're about to hear is a true story. In January 1959, 10 experienced hikers from the Ural Polytechnic Institute set off on a winter expedition into Russia's frozen Ural Mountains. Their goal was Mount Otorten, a remote peak whose Monsey name ominously translates to "don't go there." They were young, mostly in their early 20s, and led by 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov. Despite the brutal cold and isolation, they were no amateurs. They had navigated snowbound terrain before. This was supposed to be another badge of honor for their mountaineering records. One of the hikers, Yuri Yudin, turned back early due to illness. He would become the only one to return alive. For the next few days, the remaining 9 hiked through harsh winds and sub-zero temperatures, documenting their progress with journal entries and photographs. They joked, they sang, they kept morale high, calling themselves the conquerors of the Ural. On February 1st, for reasons still unknown, they stopped short of their destination and set up camp on the bare slope of Koletsyakal. It was an odd choice. They were just over a mile from a forested area that would have offered shelter from the wind. Perhaps they didn't want to lose progress, or maybe they simply misjudged the fading daylight. Whatever the reason, that decision sealed their fate. Weeks passed. When the group didn't return on their scheduled date of February 12th, concern slowly turned into panic. By February 20th, the Soviet government deployed search teams, students, locals, and military units with helicopters and dogs. On February 26th, the rescue teams located the group's tent, half buried on the windswept slope of Koletsyakal. What they found sent chills even deeper than the snow ever could. The tent was slashed open from the inside, not unzipped or torn from outside by animals, but cut through by someone trying to escape. Their boots and jackets were still inside. Their belongings were neatly arranged. No signs of a struggle, no indication of an avalanche, just panic and something that had made 9 trained hikers flee barefoot into minus 30 degrees Celsius temperatures. A trail of footprints led down the slope toward the tree line. Most were barefoot or in socks. Some showed only one shoe. The footprints were spaced out, suggesting the group walked, not ran. A mile down, beneath a cedar tree, lay the first 2 bodies, Krivonischenko and Doroshenko. They wore only underwear. A makeshift fire had been lit nearby, now long dead. The bark of the tree was shredded. Skin and blood beneath their nails suggested. They tried to climb it in desperation. 3 more bodies were found halfway back to the tent. Dyatlov himself, Zina Kolmogorova, and Rustam Slobodin all had collapsed in the snow, positioned as though they'd been trying to return to the tent. Slobodin's skull was cracked, but it wasn't fatal. The remaining 4 were missing. It wasn't until May that the final 4 bodies were discovered. They were buried under 4 meters of snow in a ravine deep within the forest. The scene grew stranger. These four weren't simply frozen, they were brutalized. Zolotaryov and Dubinina had crushed ribs. Thibaut Brignolles had a shattered skull. Dubinina was missing her eyes, her tongue, and part of her lips. There were no external wounds to explain the internal trauma. Some of their clothing showed traces of radiation. All of it deepened the mystery. The final report from Soviet investigators offered little comfort. Their official conclusion? The hikers had succumbed to a compelling natural force. The case was closed. Files were archived. Locals whispered about it for decades, but no answers ever came. Yuri Yudin, the survivor, would spend his life haunted by the mystery. He believed the government knew more than it admitted. He claimed he saw military gear among the recovered items, objects none of the hikers owned. To this day, no one knows what truly happened that night on Kholat Cycle, but some who returned to the site claimed to feel something watching them. One of the original search party members, Alexei Vasnin, told a chilling tale before his death. He said, "We camped near the site. That night, I heard a sound like dragging, something moving through snow. No wind, just that sound. And then a low hum in my skull. Not a sound, like it was in me. We weren't alone out there." The legend of Dyatlov Pass only grew darker with time. In 2012, 2 Swedish hikers set out to retrace the Dyatlov route, documenting everything for a blog. They carried GPS trackers, modern equipment, satellite phones. Everything the original hikers didn't have. They made it to the site, set up camp, uploaded one final blog entry at 3:17 a.m. Pressure in the air. Wind has shifted. Something outside. No footsteps. Just vibration. Not sure if it's real. Can't sleep. They were rescued the next morning, alive but shaken. Their tent was untouched, but neither spoke about what had happened. One of them, Eva Lindqvist, later said in a private interview, "We were zipped in. Cozy. No wind. Then, something brushed the side of the tent. Not a hand. Bigger. Heavy. Like a pulse through the ground. Then humming. Like a signal inside our bones. I don't know what it was, but I know something watched us." To this day, no theory fully explains the Dyatlov mystery. Was it an avalanche? Military testing? Paranoia? Mass hysteria? Or something else entirely? Hikers still visit the site, but none camp on the slope. Not after dark. Not on that mountain. Because in the silence of the Urals, sometimes the wind whispers a name, and sometimes the mountain whispers back. It was February 24th, 1978, when 5 men, Gary Mathias, Bill Sterling, Jack Madruga, Ted Weiher, and Jack Hewitt, piled into a turquoise and white 1969 Mercury Montego and drove off into the night. They had just watched a college basketball game in Chico, California. The plan was to return home to Yuba City afterward, but they never came back. The men were all in their 20s and 30s. Each had some form of mild, mental or emotional disability, but were otherwise functioning well. They were close friends, bonded by routine, shared humor, and their love of sports. The next day, they were supposed to play in a Special Olympics basketball tournament. They had talked about it for weeks. Winning meant free jackets and a trip to Los Angeles. They were excited, giddy even. That night, the car drove away from the main highway, deep into the Sierra Nevada mountains. It was strange. Chico was west. Their car was found the next day, abandoned on a dirt road 70 miles away, high in the Plumas National Forest. The road was remote, snow-covered, and steep. No one could explain why they had gone that way. The car wasn't stuck. It had enough gas, but it had been left with the windows rolled down and the doors unlocked. There were no signs of struggle. The keys were missing. The area was deadly cold at night, often dipping well below freezing. Searchers combed the forest, but there was no trace of the men. Only empty snow and silence. It made no sense. The Montego was found on a logging road that even locals avoided in winter. Thick trees loomed around it. Tire tracks ended where the car had stopped, clean and without skidding. Footprints led away from the road into the woods, but they didn't last long. Snow buried everything else. The families were desperate. Jack Madruga's mother said he never would have driven up that road. He hated the cold. Gary Mathias, the most independent of the five, had schizophrenia but was stable on medication. He was familiar with the area, so why would they go there? There were no answers. For months, the case stalled. Then spring came, and with it, snowmelt. In June, a group of motorcyclists were exploring the mountain roads when they came across a U.S. forest. Service trailer 19 miles from where the car was found. The door had been smashed. Inside, they discovered a body. It was Ted Weiher. His beard was thick. His feet were badly frostbitten. He had starved to death. But strangely, the trailer had food. Enough canned rations to last all 5 men for weeks. There was even a heating system, blankets, and matches. But none of it had been used. Ted had wrapped himself in 8 sheets. He had survived at least 8 to 13 weeks before dying. On a table next to his body was a watch. Not his. No one knew whose it was. 3 other bodies were eventually found in the forest, scattered miles apart. Madruga and Sterling frozen in the snow. Hewitt near a stream. But Gary Mathias, the only one familiar with the area, was never found. He had vanished completely. The search teams returned. Questions mounted. Why had the men left the car? Why hadn't they used the food in the trailer? Why didn't they build a fire or huddle together for warmth? It was as if they had been terrified of something. Running, splitting up, trying to escape. The trailer's window had been broken, not opened. Whoever entered had been desperate. But once inside, they had done nothing to survive. Authorities suggested hypothermia, disorientation, or even foul play. But no theory made sense. Not all 5 men would have lost control. Gary was ex-Army. Jack knew how to drive. Ted could think logically. One investigator found scratch marks on trees and broken branches above head height. Something had spooked them, or hunted them. A rumor spread among locals, something about lights in the forest that night. A woman had reported seeing a group of men and a baby near a store 30 miles from the car. They were disoriented. One man was silent. Another kept saying, "We have to hide." She wasn't taken seriously at the time, but maybe she should have been. There was another report. A man named Joseph. Shones had been stuck in the snow on that same road the night the men disappeared. He had a mild heart attack while trying to push his car and was stuck for hours. Around midnight, he saw headlights and what looked like flashlights. Then he heard voices. He called for help. The lights turned off. Later, he saw 5 men walking and a woman carrying something that looked like a baby. He thought it might have been hallucinations. But after the news broke, he contacted the police. They brushed it off. But why were there lights? Who had the flashlights? And who was the woman? The families were convinced foul play was involved. Gary Mathias' boots were found in the trailer, but not his body. If he left the trailer barefoot, he couldn't have gone far. Yet he was never found. No remains, no clothing, no sign. Some believe Gary fled into the forest and survived. Others say he was taken. And then there's the theory no one wanted to voice aloud. Something followed them. Something that didn't leave footprints. Back at home, Gary Mathias' bedroom remained untouched. His shoes, spare glasses, and medicine were all in the car. He would have known he needed those to survive. If he'd planned to leave for long, he would have taken them. But he hadn't. Experts later said the trailer had a working propane tank. If someone had lit it, they could have survived for months. They also found a storage locker full of food. None of it was touched. The question wasn't just why they left the car. It was why they stopped trying to survive. Ted had wrapped himself in sheets, but hadn't eaten the food. The others had wandered off separately and died in the snow, miles apart. It was as if they'd been running from something, splitting up in panic. Some theorists suggested drug use, but toxicology reports were clean. Others said it was confusion or a mental breakdown shared between the five. But those who knew the men said that was impossible. They were scared of something. One ranger who searched the forest years later shared a story in private. He didn't speak publicly, but a journalist quoted him anonymously. He said he returned to the area years after the case went cold. While camping alone near the site, he heard something. Whispers. He said they weren't voices exactly, just patterns in the wind, rhythmic and strange, as if something wanted to be understood. His dog growled at the trees. Then he saw movement, slow, large, gliding just beyond the tree line. He never returned to that site. Locals in the area spoke of a presence in the woods. Something ancient. Something that hated fire. Some said they saw glowing shapes on certain nights. Others just avoided the woods altogether. They called it the Quiet One. Something that waited in the snow and followed voices. Something that didn't need footprints to move. Years passed. The families held on to what they could. Gary's mother believed he was alive. Others thought he had been the last to die. But investigators couldn't explain how he had disappeared without a trace, especially barefoot in snow-covered mountains. A few believed Gary might have killed the others in a fit of psychosis. But again, no evidence. More chilling was what wasn't found. No signs of struggle. No forced entry in the car. No blood. Just a void. Ted had survived for weeks in the trailer, slowly starving to death with food just feet away. That detail haunted the case. It was like something had been in the trailer with him, watching. To this day, the case remains unsolved. No answers, no arrests, no complete remains for Gary. The story has faded from headlines, but not from memory. The trail where they vanished is still there, overgrown, icy, and quiet. Hikers sometimes find strange things, pieces of clothing, empty footprints in snow, or sounds that don't match wind or wildlife. One YouTuber tried to film a documentary at the trailer site. He stayed one night. The next morning, his tent was shredded. He left without filming the rest. He said, "I don't know if it's haunted, cursed, or something else. But I know this. Those 5 men didn't just get lost. They were led there. And whatever found them wasn't human.